I was asked a question after my last video about getting laid off at 47. And I was asked about my personal circumstances. So the person was interested, which is understandable because the observation was I handled it pretty well. And so would I mind saying what my circumstances were? Was I married, engaged, did I have children? And I can understand that thought crossing somebody's mind because, of course, if you're in that situation and you're married, then it's generally much easier to deal with than when you're on your own. I wasn't married and I wasn't engaged. I didn't have a partner in my life at all at that time. I was single. And my parents weren't wealthy, so I wasn't able to rely on them. But one of the things I did have, I suppose, going for me was I was independent. I had no dependent children. And so therefore I only had to worry about myself. In terms of disadvantages, I suppose I'd worked for the same company for 31 years, and I was very loyal to that company. 31 years working for a company like Tesco seems really good until you start to fill out your CV, because all you have on your CV are Tesco roles. And yes, you've got lots of them and you've got lots of experience, but it's all with one company. Another disadvantage I had was I was a generalist. So in Tesco, where you're building a career with one company, that was really good to be a generalist because it meant you could go anywhere in the company really, and lead a team of people, and and that would work basically. We're always told we had transferable skills, and I always felt I did. But when it came to looking for another job, people were always looking for specialism and expertise. And I didn't really have that because I was more of somebody who would make things happen. So if my team had problems, I could unlock those problems. I could get rid of the obstacles so they could get on and do what they were doing. But in terms of what I actually did, I didn't really have any skills. I wasn't a great admin person or nothing really, nothing really. And so I wasn't confident that I'd be able to get myself another job on a similar kind of salary and benefits package. But the reason I wasn't scared was I had some strengths. I had equity in my house. And I had that because for 30 years, my hobby had been renovating properties. Now, I didn't just do it for the sake of it. It wasn't a business or anything. But every time I moved house for Tesco, I would always buy a house that needed doing up because that's what I like to do. I love to turn a house that's been neglected into a house that's loved. And so I was very skilled at that. I'd done it with lots of houses, and I'd invariably increase the value of these houses every time I moved, and then I'd buy another one, but I'd buy one for quite a lot less money, so then I had the money to do it up. So that was something I'd continuously done. And when I was made redundant, I was in a house that I had bought, I think, about 6 to 12 months earlier. And I was gradually doing it up, but I didn't have the cash to do it. So I was doing it with my salary. So I was doing it piecemeal at a time. So it was going to take me a few years to do, but I was happy with that. I loved where it was. And I could see the value in it long term. But of course, when I lost my job, I lost the income. But what I did get was I got a redundancy package. So that was another huge strength. And I had enough money in the redundancy package to finish the house. But I did have a mortgage on the house, so I knew that when I finished the house, I was going to have to sell it. So that was always my plan. So, and I couldn't think of what job I wanted to do. And I just thought, to begin with, to be able to choose what I did, I wanted to finish the house and then know I could sell it. In fact, I wanted to sell it because I wanted to get that mortgage off my back because it was on my back. And I always think the only way you can never lose your house is to have a mortgage, in the UK anyway. So that was my primary focus. And then, building a bit of a social life, because all my social life was really at work. Not that I used to go out socializing with my work colleagues, but I spent so much time at work. I didn't really have much of a social life outside of it. So I started to do that, and I made some friends locally. It did seem like a good idea, I thought, to finish my house and get it done up so I could sell it for all the reasons I just said. Yeah, so I did it. It was a big job. I knocked some walls down. I had to put a steel beam in, and I changed it from, I think I reduced the number of bedrooms, but I increased the number of bathrooms to make it more saleable. So they were quite big renovation works that I did. I did all. No, I didn't. I was going to say I did the painting myself. I usually do, but I didn't on this house because the ceilings were so high. So I had a local painter do that. So it wasn't luck that I was able to do this. There were a number of factors which I laid out, and in terms of, and then what I did. So once the house was done, I sold it, and then during that time, because I was single, I'd started online dating, and I wasn't meeting anybody, and I recognised that I wasn't even meeting the right type of people, and at that time I didn't know why. I learned since, and that's probably a whole other video. But at the time I didn't know why, and I thought I'd always wanted to live in America. So I thought, well, I could sell up and then get myself a visa for America and go to America. So I did. So whilst the house was being finished, that I started that process. So I applied for a 10-year visa, and it allowed me to have 6 months a year in America. And I had to go and have an interview at the embassy in London. And interestingly, on the day I was at the embassy having my interview, I had a call from my estate agent to tell me that I'd had an offer on my house, and it was almost full asking price. And they wanted to buy all my furniture as well, but not just my furniture, everything. They wanted everything on the walls, the cutlery and the crockery in the drawers, everything. So all I had to take out was personal belongings, which, it was perfect timing. And, if ever you were to think that happened for a reason, that has to be one of those occasions where it was just meant to be. So that's what I did. And then, so I sold up and moved to America, only for 6 months, and I had no idea what was coming next and what would happen when I was there. But I just had such a calling that that's where I was meant to be. And so that's what I did. So I booked my flight ticket, and I'll never forget I was sat on the tarmac. I'd just closed up, I'd completed on my house. I had my money in the bank, and I was flying to Sarasota. Well, I was flying to Tampa and going to Sarasota, and have absolutely no idea what I was going to do from there other than probably travel in America. And I remember sat next to a lady, and she asked me, oh, how long are you going for? I said, 6 months. And I was so excited. I was grinning from ear to ear. And yeah, I'll never forget that feeling. And my life, oh my goodness, has never been the same since. But those were my circumstances. And the reason I say it wasn't luck is because, so one of my favourite sayings was by Daley Thompson, who was a decathlete years ago. And he used to say, luck is where preparation and opportunity meet. And I think that's right, because I think me doing my houses up as a hobby set me up, and to be able to live the life that I wanted. And then obviously I had a good salary as well. But if I hadn't had the ability to do that, to renovate houses, I wouldn't have been able to do that with my house, and I wouldn't have had the equity in my house to be able to then to live off. And so that was my preparation, and then the opportunity was redundancy. And so I chose to take my money, and you could say take my money and run, but it was take my money and change my life completely instead of having to get another job. My suggestion, and this isn't my advice because I would never give advice to anybody else at all, but I always say, if you own your house, you can always downsize, and then that frees you up money, and then you have options. Because I think what was the best thing for me in that situation, I had options. I didn't have to just go straight out and get another job. And ever since I left, which is 11 years ago now, I feel like I've always had options. And in fact, I think I would feel really constrained if I didn't have options. I think it's options that make me feel free, because it really is very freeing. So, was it a good idea to not get another job? 100%. Absolutely. I've been free ever since I left in 2013. And yeah, I thoroughly recommend that feeling of freedom. It's pretty good.